All right, guys, let me do what I never do. Let me spare the lash and spare embarrassment by not naming names. Now, I'm going to disclose right up front while I'm walking the fist because these are my friends. And I ain't got very many. I just don't have very many. It's the way that it goes. But we need to be real clear with something. Okay, we got to be real fair with each other. Because all the fighters watch this. The people in the offices, in the industry, athletic commissions and managers, they all watch. And they all try to learn something. And that flatters me. I don't say that arrogantly when they text me and tell me I really appreciate that they say that they come to me for advice. But guys, we got to be real fair on something, okay? Don't ask for a pay raise again if you're not the main event. We got to understand that. I am hearing people, ones that I'm close with, coming out talking about more money. They're smart enough to know you get more when you bring in more. They're smart enough and they're fair enough, business-wise, to adhere to that principle. But they will continually talk about how much they are worth and how much they are bringing in when they're not headlining shows. And I'm not sure where that concept is lost. I've been in workout rooms before where two guys were the same weight class, back in my wrestling day, but they're the same weight class, and so they won't wrestle each other, even though they're teammates, and even though it's practice, they stay away from each other just in case they run into each other in a tournament. Okay. But were you practicing to win that tournament? Were you practicing to make a varsity spot? Were you practicing for a wrestle-off? Or are you trying to become the world and Olympic champion? It's a very fair question. Because if you believe that you can, and that you have what it takes, and that somewhere in your future is the World or Olympic Championship, but you don't believe that you should have to be the best wrestler in your workout room, we have a problem. And it all starts right there. It all starts right with your workout room. Doesn't matter what sport you're doing. Doesn't matter if you're basketball. Doesn't matter if you're wrestling. Doesn't matter what you're doing. You start with your immediate group. Can I beat everybody in this room? Do I outwork everybody in this room? Do I put in more hours? Am I here first? I mean, whatever it might be, can I beat the ones in this room? If the answer is yes, let's go to the city. If you take over the city, by God, let's get you in that state meet. If you can do it at the state meet, let's move you right into the nationals. If you can do it at nationals, we'll take you to the World Championship. That's precisely what the Olympic Games is all about. But that's precisely what the NCAA is all about. You want to be on the winning football team, you got to get the varsity spot to start with. Right there from Jump Street, you got to be able to get out of the locker room to get to the city championship, to qualify for the state meet, to get to the... do you understand how this works? It would seem very basic and simple. The gal who is not the homecoming queen at her high school goes out to be Miss USA? How does that work? Well, here's a news flash. It doesn't. So please stop, because we'll get behind you. I got a big audience. I'll bring them to your side when it's justified. Believe me. Done it many times, and it's worked many times. I will help you build those moments. I will tell you what order of the negotiation you need to go in. And I will bring the mandate of the masses with us. If you're co-main events, please stop. Please. Don't tell us what a draw you are if you didn't outdraw the people on the card that you were just on. If you are not the last one to leave the locker room that you're assigned to, we cannot make believe that you're in command of more money. It's a very interesting spot. I see these weird things happen all the time. And the three little letters UFC are going to outdraw you any day of the week. And that's been tested. There was a time, this was about 10 years ago, and the UFC was going to Australia. I believe it was their second time ever going to Australia. I think it was Melbourne. But they did not announce a card. They didn't have a card. They didn't have any bout agreements done. They got a date booked. They worked it out with their distributing partners. They got a venue, and they just put tickets on sale. In 24 hours, they had sold out. Now, there's not very many brands that can do that. If the NFL announced they're going to have to say who they're bringing. You get these parts of the world that like soccer, I can't possibly relate to that. You still got to say who you're bringing. The UFC sold out in less than 24 hours. 8 to 10 of those hours, the world was asleep. They still sold it out inside of 24 hours, which means they only needed about 12 hours to sell it an entire venue that didn't even have a main event. It didn't even have a single fight. Not one. So that brand is always going to work. Now, we're seeing something similar to that, and the reason I bring you that is to segue over to Jake Paul. Jake Paul is going to fight at the Mecca of Madison Square Garden. He is going to be the headliner, and he's going to do it on August something. I think 13th. August something. He has not announced an opponent. Now, that is an alpha move if I've ever. That is a guy who is sure of himself. That is a guy who believes he's sitting on an ace, because there's only been 2 boxers in history that can draw on their own. Oscar De La Hoya in his heyday and Mike Tyson throughout his entire career. So you now have a guy the boxing community hasn't overly accepted. He's going to headline over a gal who's said to be really good at boxing, or like the world's best boxer. It's his own girl. He doesn't have an opponent yet. That's fascinating. I mean, that is such a cool move to the highest degree, if it works. If he can, in fact, sell out. And by the way, nobody's calling for the Jake Paul fight, and Jake's not trying to stir anything up with anybody else. So we all understand. We can all put our Columbo rain jacket on and realize that he's already got an opponent. And he put a hush order on him, and somehow they kept the secret in the world's dumbest industry. They've somehow kept their mouth shut. But who could that opponent be? And the world believes it's going to be Will Fury, Tyson's brother. Here's the problem with that. And it might be. I suppose if you were to hedge your bet, that's probably the way I would guess as well. But here's the problem with that. That's not exciting. That wouldn't be new. That wouldn't be a revelation. That's a guy that we were already promised and the arena didn't sell out for. And even if the fight fell through, I mean, right, it was just, there's going to be you got to have a ta-da moment. When you're doing this, you have to, ta-da, you have to have that moment. Ta-da! Here's what I've done. Here he comes through door number 2. It has to be. Will Fury's going to pop up on a satellite with his dad and brother with him because he couldn't handle a press conference by himself. I mean, what are you going to do? But I'm still hedging towards that. But that's not a ta-da moment. And I don't feel like Jake Paul would make a mistake that massive. Jake Paul's got good data. He's got good numbers. His last event didn't do great. He upped it. He upped it to Madison Square Garden. He upped it to announcing a show with no opponent. It's a very fascinating thing. This is done by a guy who hasn't got it wrong yet. So I don't know what movie he's going to make. But it's a very different spot, right? You got a guy making a whole bunch of money in Jake Paul who can book a venue without even having an opponent and have an absolute confidence that it's going to work and it's going to draw. And he's never talking about money. Never. He knows how the business works. He knows what his participation is going to be. And he's confident that he's going to get what he's got coming his way. You have other guys who have the same participation who aren't yet main events. And they want to talk about where's the money. If you want to be real fair and real open business, it's got to go both ways. Got to go both ways. Which means the promoter should be able to come back to you, say, look at everything I've done for you. Look at all the advancements, all the marketing, all the money I've put into you. I did that same thing to George St. Pierre, and look what he brought in for me. I did half of this for Brock Lesnar, and look what he brought in for me. I did a quarter of this for Conor McGregor, and look what he brought in for me. This is what I've done for you, and you're still not my main event. I need to reassess this contract. I need you to give me some of the money back. If you're willing to do that, you're willing to be honest and you're willing to be fair, then you can point the gun and go the other way as well. But please stop talking about money unless you're the main event.